It only takes one wrong assumption to destroy a career, but sometimes it destroys the wrong career first. The morning sun had barely climbed above the tree line when the interstate checkpoint outside Richmond, Virginia, settled into its familiar rhythm. Engines idled beneath a pale blue sky. Tractor-trailers rolled forward one by one, and commuters glanced impatiently at their dashboards as another ordinary weekday unfolded. Uniformed officers moved between vehicles with practiced efficiency, checking identification, exchanging polite greetings, and waving drivers through. To most people waiting in line, it looked like just another routine security operation. To rookie officer Logan Pierce, however, today was supposed to be the day he proved he belonged. Fresh out of the academy only 6 months earlier, Logan wore his crisp uniform with unmistakable pride. His polished badge reflected the morning light. His boots looked untouched by wear, and every movement carried the determination of someone desperate to earn respect. He had heard the stories from veteran officers countless times. Stay alert. Trust your instincts. Never let appearances fool you. Those lessons echoed inside his mind as he watched every passing vehicle with intense concentration, convinced that success belonged to officers willing to act before everyone else noticed danger. His supervising sergeant had reminded the entire unit that morning to remain professional and avoid unnecessary confrontations. The checkpoint existed to keep travelers safe, not to create conflict. Most officers nodded and returned to work without another thought. Logan listened, but another voice quietly competed with those instructions. It was the voice of ambition, whispering that one decisive moment could accelerate an entire career. A dark gray luxury SUV gradually approached the inspection lane, moving slowly until it stopped beside the orange traffic cones. The vehicle was spotless, its windows legally tinted, its registration current, and nothing about it suggested urgency or panic. Behind the steering wheel sat a middle-aged black man dressed in a tailored navy suit, with a simple silver watch resting against his wrist. His expression remained calm, almost peaceful, as he lowered the driver's window before anyone asked. "Good morning, officer," he said with a polite smile. His voice was steady, measured, and carried the quiet confidence of someone completely comfortable under pressure. Logan studied him for several long seconds. Something about the driver's composure unsettled him. It wasn't nervousness. It wasn't aggression. It was confidence, the kind that made Logan wonder whether the man believed ordinary rules no longer applied to him. The rookie's heartbeat quickened as his imagination filled the empty spaces with suspicion rather than facts. He requested identification in a sharper tone than necessary. Without hesitation, the man handed over a perfectly organized leather credential holder along with his driver's license. Everything appeared legitimate at first glance, yet Logan continued examining each document as though searching for something invisible. Around them, traffic slowed. Curious drivers glanced through their windshields while nearby officers briefly looked toward the inspection lane before returning to their assignments. The stranger never argued. He simply rested both hands on the steering wheel and waited with remarkable patience, his eyes never leaving the young officer. Imagine standing there, judged before speaking another word, knowing every calm breath might somehow be mistaken for guilt. The silence between them grew heavier with every passing second, until even the distant sound of diesel engines seemed to fade beneath the weight of unspoken assumptions. Logan believed he was protecting the public. The man behind the wheel understood something Logan did not. Sometimes the greatest test of authority is not how loudly someone exercises it, but whether they recognize true authority when it quietly stands right in front of them. And within the next few minutes, that ordinary checkpoint would become the place where one rookie officer learned that lesson in the most unforgettable way imaginable. Logan glanced once more at the identification resting inside the leather credential holder before returning his attention to the man behind the wheel. The driver's license read Isaiah Carter. The photograph matched perfectly. The address was current. Every security feature appeared authentic. Yet instead of easing his concern, the flawless presentation only deepened it. Somewhere inside his mind, Certainty had quietly given way to assumption. He had convinced himself that someone carrying such impressive credentials must have found a sophisticated way to imitate legitimacy. He leaned slightly toward the open window, his expression growing firmer with every passing second. "Sir, where are you headed this morning?" he asked. Isaiah answered without hesitation. "Washington, District of Columbia. I have a scheduled meeting that cannot be delayed." His tone remained calm, never defensive, never impatient. It was the voice of someone accustomed to difficult conversations without allowing emotion to control the outcome. Logan folded his arms. "Do you have documentation explaining the purpose of your travel?" Isaiah slowly reached toward a slim leather portfolio resting on the passenger's seat, carefully announcing each movement before touching it. "I have official travel authorization if you would like to review it." The rookie nodded cautiously. Several nearby officers casually observed the exchange, sensing that the inspection had already lasted much longer than routine procedure required. Sergeant Michael Turner looked across the lanes for a brief moment before returning to assist another vehicle, trusting that his newest officer could manage a simple checkpoint inspection. Isaiah handed over another document. Federal seals decorated the page with remarkable precision. Government letterhead appeared exactly where it belonged. Logan examined every line carefully, searching for inconsistencies that refused to appear. Instead of feeling reassured, he found himself growing increasingly determined to uncover something everyone else had missed. He remembered instructors at the academy repeating that confidence could be used to disguise deception. In his mind, Isaiah's composure no longer reflected professionalism. It became evidence supporting a theory that existed only inside Logan's imagination. A light breeze swept across. The checkpoint, carrying the scent of fresh asphalt warming beneath the Virginia sun. Traffic slowly accumulated behind the waiting sport utility vehicle. Drivers checked their watches. Delivery vans shifted impatiently from lane to lane. Even so, Isaiah never glanced toward the growing line. He simply waited, hands resting lightly on the steering wheel, breathing evenly as though time itself refused to pressure him. Imagine remaining perfectly respectful while complete strangers silently decide who you must be before learning anything about your character. That quiet burden had become familiar to Isaiah long before this morning. Years of public service had taught him that dignity often required patience stronger than frustration. Logan finally looked directly into Isaiah's eyes. "I'm going to need you to step out of the vehicle while we continue verifying your credentials." There was no accusation in the sentence itself, yet the implication settled heavily between them. Isaiah paused for only a second before offering a small, courteous nod. "Officer, I will fully cooperate. However, I respectfully ask that you contact the number listed on the credential before drawing any conclusions." Logan barely glanced at the card. "We will determine what needs to be verified." Isaiah stepped from the vehicle exactly as instructed, buttoning his suit jacket against the cool morning breeze. His polished shoes touched the pavement with measured confidence, and he quietly stood beside the driver's side door without complaint. Around the checkpoint, conversation slowed. Several experienced officers now watched more carefully, sensing that what had begun as an ordinary inspection was drifting towards something none of them could yet explain. Isaiah stood quietly beside the sport utility vehicle while Logan continued studying documents that had already survived multiple layers of federal verification long before reaching his hands. The silence stretched across the checkpoint with unusual weight. Experienced officers recognized the feeling immediately. It was the kind of silence that often appeared when confidence slowly drifted away from facts. Officer Sophia Martinez approached from a neighboring inspection lane, carrying a handheld scanner beneath one arm. She lowered her voice so only Logan could hear. "Everything all right over here?" Logan nodded without looking up. "Something does not add up." Sophia glanced toward Isaiah, who remained composed with his hands visible and his posture relaxed. Nothing about the scene suggested urgency. Nothing suggested danger. She quietly replied, "His documents look legitimate from here." Logan answered almost immediately. Sometimes the best fakes do. Sophia hesitated before returning to her assigned lane, but concern lingered in her expression. She had worked enough roadside inspections to understand that instinct alone could never replace evidence. Isaiah noticed the exchange, but said nothing. He had spent decades inside institutions where assumptions often arrived before introductions. He understood that arguing rarely changed minds already committed to a conclusion. Instead, he watched the steady flow of traffic continue beneath the bright Virginia morning, listening to the distant hum of engines and the occasional voice carried across the checkpoint by the wind. Several minutes passed before Logan opened the leather portfolio once again. Inside rested a small identification wallet containing another credential protected beneath clear laminate. The federal seal reflected sunlight with remarkable clarity. A photograph showed the same calm face now standing beside the vehicle. Beneath it appeared an official title printed in unmistakable lettering. Logan stared at the words, then quietly shook his head. They seemed too extraordinary to believe. His thoughts raced faster than reason. In his experience, people who held powerful positions rarely traveled without visible security. They certainly did not arrive alone at roadside checkpoints in ordinary government vehicles. The possibility that the identification might actually be genuine felt less believable to him than the idea that it had somehow been fabricated. Imagine presenting every document requested, answering every question respectfully, following every instruction exactly as given, yet still watching suspicion grow simply because someone cannot reconcile your appearance with the authority written on the page. Isaiah had learned that true confidence did not require immediate recognition. It required consistency. He calmly spoke for the first time in several minutes. Officer Pierce, the verification number is printed directly beneath the credential. A single phone call will answer every question you have. Logan looked at the card, but never reached for the radio clipped to his shoulder. Instead, he carefully closed the credential holder and placed it on the roof of the vehicle. I'm not finished reviewing everything. Isaiah nodded politely. Take all the time you need. I only ask that the process remain based on facts. Those simple words settled over the checkpoint with surprising force. Nearby officers exchanged subtle glances. Sergeant Michael Turner finally began walking toward the inspection lane after noticing the growing line of delayed vehicles. His measured pace reflected experience rather than alarm. He expected nothing more than a routine question from his newest officer. Neither Logan nor Isaiah realized that within moments a single verification would transform an ordinary roadside inspection into a lesson every officer present would remember for the rest of their careers. Sergeant Michael Turner stopped beside the inspection lane and immediately sensed that something had shifted. The line of waiting vehicles now stretched far beyond the orange barriers. Yet the real tension had nothing to do with traffic. It was written across the faces of the officers standing nearby, each pretending to stay focused on routine duties while quietly watching the unusual encounter unfold. Michael looked first at Logan, then at the neatly organized documents resting on the roof of the sport utility vehicle, and finally at Isaiah Carter, who continued waiting with remarkable patience. Officer Pierce, the sergeant asked calmly, "What seems to be the issue?" Logan straightened his posture. "Sir, I believe these federal credentials require additional verification. There are inconsistencies." Michael extended his hand. "Let me see them." Logan carefully passed over the credential holder. The sergeant examined the identification for less than 15 seconds before lifting one eyebrow. Every seal appeared correct. Every security feature matched what he had encountered during previous joint operations with federal agencies. Nothing immediately suggested fraud. Even so, Michael understood that procedure existed for moments exactly like this. Rather than debating opinions, officers verified facts. He reached for the portable radio attached to his vest, but paused when Isaiah spoke in the same composed voice he had maintained since arriving. "Sergeant, there's also a direct verification number printed beneath the identification. It connects to the executive operations desk." Michael looked down and saw the number exactly where Isaiah had indicated. He offered a polite nod. "Thank you, sir." Logan shifted uneasily beside him. "Sergeant, with respect, sophisticated documents can still be fabricated." Michael answered without raising his voice. "That is why we verify them before reaching conclusions." Those words settled over the checkpoint with quiet authority. Officer Ryan Collins, standing several yards away, subtly slowed his inspection of another vehicle, curious to see what would happen next. Officer Sofia Martinez also looked over again, sensing that the situation was approaching a turning point. Michael entered the verification number into the secure communication device issued to supervisors. The call connected almost immediately. A calm professional voice answered. "Federal Bureau of Investigation, Executive Operations. This line is monitored. How may I assist you?" Michael identified himself, provided his badge number, explained that he was conducting a routine credential verification, and carefully read the identification number exactly as printed. Silence followed for only a few seconds. Then the voice became noticeably more formal. "Sergeant Turner, please remain on the line. Do not disconnect." Michael exchanged a brief glance with Isaiah, who remained completely still. He neither smiled nor appeared concerned. He simply waited. Across the checkpoint, the ordinary sounds of passing traffic continued as if nothing unusual were happening. Yet, for the officers standing nearby, the atmosphere had become strangely still. Logan folded his arms, convinced the extended pause supported his growing suspicions. In his mind, every additional second reinforced the belief that the identification would soon be exposed as counterfeit. Imagine believing that patience proves innocence while someone else mistakes that same patience for deception. The difference between wisdom and prejudice often appears invisible until the truth finally speaks for itself. Less than 1 minute later, the voice returned to the line, now carrying unmistakable urgency. "Sergeant Turner, the credentials you have provided are authentic. The individual currently with you is Director Isaiah Carter. Please ensure his identification is returned immediately. A senior federal response team has already been notified of this verification request and will contact your command within moments." Michael felt the weight of those words settle across the quiet morning like a storm no one had expected for the first time that morning. Sergeant Michael Turner felt the ground shift beneath his confidence. He listened carefully as the executive operations officer repeated the confirmation, leaving no room for misunderstanding. "Director Isaiah Carter. Federal Bureau of Investigation. Identity fully verified. Executive travel authorized." Before Michael could respond, another instruction followed. "Sergeant, Director Carter is traveling under a limited visibility security protocol. Please return all credentials immediately and maintain professional courtesy. A representative from your department leadership is being notified now." The line disconnected. Michael lowered the communication device slowly, the sounds of the busy checkpoint returning all at once. Engines hummed. Tires rolled across pavement. Radios crackled in the distance. Yet inside the inspection lane, everything felt suspended in silence. Logan searched the sergeant's face for reassurance, expecting confirmation that his caution had uncovered something significant. Instead, he saw an expression he had never witnessed before. It was not anger. It was the unmistakable realization that an avoidable mistake had just become impossible to ignore. Michael carefully picked up the credential holder with both hands and stepped toward Isaiah. "Director Carter," he said respectfully, "I sincerely apologize for the unnecessary delay. Your credentials have been fully verified." Isaiah accepted the holder with a calm nod. "Thank you, Sergeant." There was no triumph in his voice. No satisfaction. Only quiet professionalism. Logan remained frozen beside the vehicle. His thoughts raced through every decision he had made during the past 20 minutes. Every question, every assumption, every opportunity he had ignored to verify facts before allowing suspicion to shape the encounter. He finally spoke, his confidence noticeably diminished. "Sir, if you are the director..." Isaiah looked toward him with the same composed expression he had maintained since arriving. "I am." Logan struggled to continue. Why did you not say so immediately? Isaiah offered a faint, thoughtful smile. I did. I handed you my identification within the first minute. Those words landed with greater weight than any lecture could have carried. Around them, nearby officers quietly looked away, understanding exactly what had happened. No dramatic confrontation was necessary. The truth had revealed itself through patience alone. Imagine spending your life earning the highest levels of responsibility, only to discover that the hardest part is convincing strangers to believe what is already written plainly before them. Titles may open doors, but character determines how someone walks through them. Before anyone spoke again, Michael's department radio sounded with an incoming priority transmission. Dispatch requested immediate contact from the regional command office. The timing left little doubt about the reason. Michael acknowledged the call and stepped several feet away before answering. Logan remained standing beside Isaiah in uncomfortable silence. Every passing second seemed longer than the last. Isaiah glanced briefly toward the line of waiting motorists. Officer Pierce, he said quietly, there is something every law enforcement professional learns eventually. Authority is not measured by how often you question people. It is measured by how fairly you treat them while searching for the truth. Logan lowered his eyes. He wanted to respond, but no words seemed adequate. Moments later, Michael returned, his expression more serious than before. Officer Pierce, he said evenly, the chief's office has instructed us to preserve all body camera recordings from this encounter. Internal Affairs has also requested an immediate preliminary report before the end of today's shift. Logan felt his stomach tighten. The checkpoint had begun as another ordinary morning. Now every decision he had made was about to be reviewed by people far beyond his own chain of command. And for the first time since joining the department, he realized that one unchecked assumption could follow an officer much farther than a single traffic stop ever could. Logan watched in silence as Sergeant Michael Turner walked a few steps away to answer another secure call from department leadership. The veteran supervisor spoke quietly, listening far more than he talked, occasionally glancing back toward the checkpoint where Isaiah Carter stood beside his vehicle with remarkable composure. Around them, officers resumed directing traffic, but the atmosphere had changed. The routine confidence that usually filled the checkpoint had been replaced by careful awareness. Everyone understood that the morning had become something much larger than a delayed inspection. Michael returned several moments later with a measured expression. Director Carter, he said respectfully, our regional commander has asked me to extend his personal apology. He is already on his way here. Isaiah inclined his head politely. That is appreciated, Sergeant, but my schedule remains important. I hope we can resolve this efficiently. Michael nodded. We intend to. Logan remained standing nearby, replaying every decision in his mind. He remembered the academy instructors reminding recruits that facts must always come before conclusions. Somewhere between ambition and uncertainty, he had allowed that lesson to fade. The realization settled heavily on his shoulders, not because someone had raised their voice, but because one needed to. The evidence spoke more clearly than any criticism ever could. Officer Sophia Martinez quietly approached with a bottle of water and offered it to Isaiah. Sir, I apologize for the delay. Isaiah accepted it with a grateful smile. Thank you, officer. Professional courtesy is always appreciated. Sophia nodded before returning to her duties, leaving Logan alone with thoughts he could no longer avoid. Imagine discovering that your greatest mistake was not asking difficult questions, but refusing to accept clear answers once they were placed directly in front of you. Pride often disguises itself as confidence until reality gently removes the disguise. A few minutes later, two unmarked federal sport utility vehicles entered the checkpoint through a restricted access lane. They moved without flashing lights or dramatic urgency, stopping several yards away. Two special agents stepped out first, scanning the area before one of them, Special Agent Lisa Carter, walked directly toward Isaiah. Director Carter, she said professionally, we received notification from Executive Operations. Is everything under control? Isaiah smiled calmly. Everything is under control now. She briefly looked towards Sergeant Turner, who returned a respectful nod, then toward Logan, whose posture revealed more than words could have expressed. No accusation appeared on her face, only careful observation. Another agent, Jamal Reed, quietly collected details from the checkpoint supervisors while confirming that no security concerns remained. Their professionalism impressed even the officers watching from nearby lanes. There was no display of authority, no attempt to embarrass anyone. Every action reflected discipline built through years of experience. Logan found that contrast impossible to ignore. The people who possessed the greatest authority seemed to have the least interest in proving it. Isaiah turned toward him one final time before preparing to leave. "Officer Pierce," he said, "every encounter becomes part of the public's memory of law enforcement. They may forget our names, but they rarely forget how we made them feel. Never allow assumptions to become stronger than evidence." Logan slowly nodded. "I understand now, sir." Isaiah answered gently. "Understanding begins today. Living that lesson will define the rest of your career." As the federal vehicles prepared to depart and the checkpoint slowly returned to normal operations, another message reached Sergeant Turner's radio. Regional headquarters confirmed that internal affairs investigators were already reviewing the body camera recordings. Before the morning ended, a formal administrative decision regarding Logan's conduct would be delivered, and every officer standing at that checkpoint sensed that the next chapter of this story was only beginning. Regional headquarters occupied the entire third floor of a modern brick administration building overlooking the James River. And by early afternoon, the conference room reserved for command staff had become unusually quiet. A large monitor displayed synchronized body camera recordings from multiple officers stationed at the checkpoint that morning. Every word, every pause, every decision unfolded exactly as it had happened. There were no dramatic edits, no missing moments, only an unbroken record of professional conduct measured against departmental standards. Chief Rebecca Collins sat at the head of the table alongside Deputy Chief Aaron Mitchell, Internal Affairs investigators, Sergeant Michael Turner, and the department's legal advisor. No one interrupted the recordings. They allowed the evidence to speak before offering opinions. Logan Pierce waited alone outside the conference room, still wearing the same neatly pressed uniform that had filled him with confidence only hours earlier. He stared through the hallway window toward the parking lot below, replaying Director Isaiah Carter's words again and again. "Authority is measured by how fairly you treat people while searching for the truth." The sentence refused to leave his mind because he now understood exactly where he had failed. It had never been wrong to verify credentials. It had been wrong to let suspicion outrun evidence. Inside the conference room, the final recording ended with Isaiah calmly accepting his identification before departing without raising his voice or demanding special treatment. The silence that followed lasted several seconds. Finally, Chief Collins folded her hands together. The director cooperated from beginning to end. The documentation was authentic. Verification procedures were available immediately. Officer Pierce chose not to use them until directed by supervision. No one challenged the summary because every person present had watched the same evidence. Deputy Chief Mitchell spoke next. "This review is not about punishment for asking questions. Every officer has that responsibility. The concern is allowing assumptions to delay objective verification after reliable documentation had already been presented." Internal Affairs investigators agreed. Their responsibility was to protect both public trust and professional integrity, and those two obligations depended upon facts rather than emotion. Imagine discovering that your most important career evaluation is not based upon what you believed, but upon what the evidence proves you actually did. Accountability rarely arrives with raised voices. Most often, it arrives carrying paperwork and quiet certainty. A department administrator entered with a sealed personnel folder and placed it before the chief. She reviewed the recommendation one final time before looking towards Sergeant Turner. "Based upon the preliminary findings, Officer Logan Pierce will be removed from active field assignment effective immediately pending completion of mandatory retraining and a full administrative review. His law enforcement credentials are suspended during that process." The decision reflected department policy rather than personal judgment. Chief Collins signed the order before standing. Outside the conference room, Logan noticed the door opening and immediately straightened his posture. Chief Collins approached him with calm professionalism. "Officer Pierce, please come with me." Inside her office, she explained every finding carefully, making certain he understood both the process and the reason behind it. When she finished, she extended her hand. "Your badge, please." Logan looked down at the silver shield attached to his uniform. Only that morning it had represented achievement, pride, and limitless possibility. Slowly, he unclipped it and placed it into the chief's waiting hand. No one celebrated. No one spoke harshly. The room remained almost completely silent because everyone present understood that losing the privilege to wear a badge, even temporarily, carried enough weight on its own. As Logan left the office wearing the same uniform, but without the symbol he had worked so hard to earn, he realized that respect could never be demanded through authority alone. It had to be built through fairness, protected by humility, and proven one decision at a time. The following Monday morning, the training academy felt different to Logan Pierce. Only a week earlier, he had walked through those same doors, believing additional instruction was something reserved for officers who lacked ability. Now he understood that experience alone did not guarantee wisdom, and confidence without self-awareness could quietly become its own liability. He entered classroom carrying nothing more than a notebook and the weight of a lesson he would never forget. Around him sat officers from departments across Virginia, each attending mandatory professional development on procedural fairness, decision-making, and constitutional policing. Some had years of experience. Others were new recruits preparing for their first assignments. None of them knew the full reason Logan had been placed in the front row. They simply recognized another officer learning alongside them. The instructor, retired United States Marshal David Reynolds, stepped to the front of the room with decades of quiet authority reflected in every movement. He did not begin with statistics or legal definitions. Instead, he asked a simple question. What is the greatest danger facing a good officer? Several hands rose immediately. Someone answered poor training. Another suggested dangerous situations. A third mentioned lack of experience. David listened patiently before shaking his head. "The greatest danger," he said calmly, "is believing that your first impression is automatically the truth." The room became silent. Logan lowered his eyes toward the notebook resting on the desk. Every word seemed directed at the decision he had made at the checkpoint. Throughout the morning, the class examined real case studies showing how assumptions could influence judgment even when officers believed they were acting professionally. Every scenario ended with the same conclusion. Facts protect everyone. Assumptions protect no one. Imagine carrying a badge every day while forgetting that the strongest piece of equipment an officer possesses is not a radio, a patrol vehicle, or even the badge itself. It is the willingness to question personal assumptions before questioning someone else's integrity. That lesson cannot be issued with a uniform. It must be earned through humility. During the afternoon session, the classroom door quietly opened. The academy director entered and exchanged a few words with Marshal Reynolds before addressing the students. "We have a guest speaker joining us for today's final discussion." Several officers looked toward the hallway with mild curiosity. Moments later, Isaiah Carter walked into the room wearing the same calm expression Logan remembered from the checkpoint. There were no cameras, no reporters, no public announcement. He had accepted the invitation without seeking recognition because his purpose was education rather than attention. Every officer stood respectfully as the director greeted the class. Logan felt his heartbeat quicken. He had expected disciplinary meetings, additional evaluations, and difficult conversations with supervisors. He had never imagined facing the very person whose patience had exposed his mistake. Isaiah thanked the academy staff before speaking in the same steady voice that had remained unchanged throughout their encounter. Law enforcement succeeds only when trust grows stronger than fear. Every person you meet deserves to be evaluated by evidence, not expectation. That principle protects communities and it protects officers as well. His eyes briefly met Logan's. There was no resentment, no bitterness, only the quiet hope that difficult lessons could still produce better public servants. Logan listened more carefully than he had ever listened to anyone before. For the first time since joining the department, he realized that becoming a respected officer was never about proving authority. It was about earning trust one fair decision at a time, and he silently promised himself that if he ever earned the right to wear his badge again, every future encounter would begin with evidence instead of assumption. Several months passed before Logan Pierce stood once again inside the familiar briefing room at regional headquarters. The polished badge that had once been removed from his uniform had been returned only after weeks of evaluation, retraining, supervised field assignments, and repeated demonstrations that he had learned far more than departmental procedures. He no longer rushed to be the first officer to make a decision. Instead, he became the first to gather every available fact before reaching one. Fellow officers quietly noticed the change. Sergeant Michael Turner noticed it first. The young rookie who had once mistaken certainty for professionalism now asked thoughtful questions, documented every interaction carefully, and treated every person with the same steady respect regardless of appearance, occupation, or circumstance. Trust, Michael realized, had finally replaced ego. On a cool autumn morning, Logan received an assignment at another highway checkpoint not far from where everything had begun. The orange traffic cones looked almost identical. The morning sunlight reflected across the pavement, just as it had months earlier. Even the steady rhythm of engines rolling forward sounded familiar. Yet this time, Logan felt different. Each approaching vehicle represented a citizen first and an investigation second. Midway through the shift, an older pickup truck slowly entered his inspection lane. Behind the wheel sat an elderly man whose hands trembled slightly as he searched for his driver's license. His clothes were worn, and the truck carried years of visible use. The line of waiting vehicles began growing longer, and several impatient drivers sounded their horns. Months earlier, Logan might have allowed frustration to influence the encounter. Instead, he smiled gently. "Take your time, sir. There is no rush." The man looked up with visible relief. "Thank you, officer. My hands are not as steady as they used to be." Logan patiently waited until every document had been located, verified them through proper procedure, and wished the driver a safe trip. The entire encounter lasted only a few extra minutes, yet everyone involved left with dignity intact. Imagine how different communities might feel if every uniform represented patience before judgment, evidence before assumption, and respect before authority. Sometimes the smallest moments reveal the greatest transformations because character is measured not during extraordinary events, but during ordinary choices repeated every single day. Later that afternoon, Logan received an unexpected message asking him to report to the regional conference room. When he entered, he found Sergeant Turner, Chief Rebecca Collins, and Director Isaiah Carter waiting inside. For a brief moment, memories of the checkpoint returned with surprising clarity. Isaiah stepped forward and extended his hand. This time Logan accepted it immediately. "Officer Pierce," Isaiah said warmly, "I requested this meeting personally because I wanted to thank you." Logan looked genuinely surprised. "Thank me, sir." Isaiah nodded. "Growth deserves recognition just as much as mistakes require accountability. Your instructors and supervisors have shared your progress. You allowed one difficult experience to change the way you serve others. That is what real professionalism looks like." Chief Collins smiled proudly. "Not every officer responds to correction with humility. You did." Logan felt the weight of those words settle far deeper than any award ever could. The badge resting on his chest no longer symbolized authority alone. It represented responsibility earned through honest reflection and better choices. As the meeting concluded, Isaiah paused at the doorway before offering one final thought. "People may remember the checkpoint for the mistake that happened there. I will remember it because someone chose to become better afterward." Logan watched him leave, understanding that justice had never been about humiliation or revenge. It had always been about truth strong enough to transform both the person who was judged unfairly and the person who had judged too quickly. On that quiet afternoon, the badge meant something entirely different than it had on the day the story began, because true honor is never found in the medal itself. It is found in the character of the person trusted to wear it. Please like and subscribe to the channel to hear more stories of justice.